Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download.
I'm Gerald Owens along with Heidi Kirk. We want to talk about an issue that has been in the news lately, Rocky Mount, the city of Rocky Mount, and their issues with the utility bills. All right, Heidi, residents in Rocky Mount, a lot of them are defaulting on their electric bills, or at least they're way behind. How did we get there?
Well, let's talk about it this way. So late last year, we got a ton of calls and emails and text messages from people who live in the city of Rocky Mount who said, we just got 2 utility bills in 1 month, right around the holiday season. That really, really hurts. And a lot of people immediately thought, this cannot be right. And so, we start to look into it. We're asking the city of Rocky Mount, the leadership team, what happened here. And we couldn't really get a straight answer. We were told over and over, it's not incorrect. These bills are right. Just 2 came at the same time because of a billing delay is what they immediately called it. Of course, we started to ask numerous questions after that. We asked them to break it down for us. We attended multiple city council meetings. We tried to break it down for people, and we never could really get a straight answer. Ultimately, the state auditor's office took this on. And last week, we got a very thorough report, several hundred pages, really breaking down what happened here. So we'll start there. Exactly what the audit said, and I went through every single page of this, is that there was an issue between the billing schedule and the meter reads, which created this to kind of get off in a way. Right. And then when the city went in to correct that issue, it led to the 2 bills. But the problem was city leaders didn't really tell anybody about that. They didn't say, we're correcting this issue, and so you may get 2 bills, and this is right. And a lot of people, read that audit and said, we get it, but still we are, playing catch up now months and months later because we got those 2 bills at the same time. Now, the state auditor was very clear in his messaging. He said, a lot of people have been using the phrases double billing. Right. You weren't double billed, but it came at an inconvenient time, especially because there wasn't a lot of controls behind the scenes that allowed, the people who work in utilities there to both catch the issue and then fix it in the right way. So this, several hundred-page audit comes out, and it's basically made the city kind of jump into action here. They're creating a lot of different ways to kind of implement the state auditor's recommendations and make this system better. But at the same time, it's put a lot of people in a really bad financial situation.
Let's take a quick break right there, and we'll be right back.
So the city had a problem. They sent people 2 bills at the same time. The bills were accurate, but it's more than a lot of these people can deal with right now, or at any time, because I imagine their electric bills kept coming. Even though they were given a grace period to pay it all back, it's almost like you threw something on top of the stack that they weren't expecting.
Well, Gerald, those electric bills keep coming. And, for the last now several months, the city has basically waived all of their penalties. So, they're not turning people's utilities off during this time. They're not charging any sort of late fees. They say that they were working with, the people in the city of Rocky Mount to make sure that this was as easy on them as it can be because the city takes responsibility. But just this week, the city came out and said, we have to come back, resume kind of our normal operations in the utility department. We'll dive into this in a minute, but they're also going through a financial crisis. That money is really important for the city. So, they've started to put these penalties back in place. So yesterday I went to the Rocky Mount Business Services Center, and of course that news created a lot of anxiety for people who live there and literally say that they are still behind on their bills ever since they got the 2 bills in 1 month. And so people were lined up. Carrying in stacks of bills, showing the city, I haven't been able to get back on track. But on the flip side of this, the city says, we gave several months of a grace period here. We have to ultimately get back to the way that our utilities have to operate. But still, a lot of these people just says they cannot pay. Now, I have to add, yesterday when we were outside, we, talked to a lot of the people who were going into the building, and they said, this line is going to take us hours hours to get through. We saw that in action. This is the building, the facility that they say at the city, this is where you come to ask your questions. That line is all the way out the door.
Oh, wow.
If you call the phone lines, which I did multiple times, you get a busy signal. So it's really hard to get those questions answered. And so, we waited around for hours. We caught a few people on their way out who actually did get help. And they said, the city is working with us on a payment plan. But the city has also provided statements that, say, everyone's case is a little bit different. And, some people are going to get payment plans, but if you're too far behind, they have to require that you pay a certain amount. So again, everyone's situation looks different. But some of those people just said this is the type of thing that they are not going to be able to recover from.
So they gave them a grace period, but they didn't push a month and say, we're going to let next month be the second bill that you got. You pay it then. They didn't do that, sounds like.
No, they did not. And that's something that, multiple people said to us yesterday. I talked to a guy who said, I ran a warehouse for decades. And when we made a mistake at that warehouse, we would take fault and we, would correct it. And then also if there was, any sort of lenience that we need to give people, we would do that. But then, in the city of Rocky Mount's case, these two bills, come back to back. It hits people at a really vulnerable time of the year, right around the holidays. And, they had to send a second bill to correct it. And a lot of people feel that that's not fair. But at the end of the day, the city said we did what we had to do, and now we are getting back on track.
Is the problem fixed?
So ultimately, they say yes.
Okay.
We need to obviously monitor this. But I asked the state auditor point blank, do you have confidence in the city of Rocky Mount? He said, I do at this point. We have issued this hundreds of page report to them. We have put in place recommendations, and city leaders say, we are taking those recommendations and we are headed in a better direction. That being said, I have to mention yesterday I called, like I said, several times. And I kept getting a busy signal. One of the things that the state auditor's report detailed was that there were some issues with the phone lines when this originally happened. So people, were calling and they couldn't get in touch. So we're going to continue to follow this story and see if this plays out in a way that is correct.
Where can people find your reporting on this topic?
All over WRAL.com. Of course, this is not the first issue that the city of Rocky Mount has. We were talking before we started recording. This really goes back a long time. I've been covering this for almost a year now after the city announced a pretty severe financial crisis last year. Basically, they had been overspending for many years in a row, which is, put them in a really difficult position. They are already working to make that up. A lot of that can be blamed on a former town manager,
right?
Or at least that's what the city says. But we're in a rough spot there, and a lot of people are just working to build back trust in the city of Rocky Mount.
I can imagine the frustration. You understand it. All right. Well, thank you, Heidi.
Thank you so much, Gerald.
And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. You can sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.